Hey guys, Matthew here once again, and yep, Last Epoch has just recently dropped its big update for the past year, which has a lot of stuff happening, a lot of improvements to the game, and a first real season or league that is actually pretty damn big and impactful as well. With this video, I just wanted to kind of throw out a bunch of thoughts in no random or in no serious order, in basically a random order, because just trying to get my thoughts out there about Last Epoch, where it stands in the ARPG scene for me anyway, and also just a bit about my character at the end of it all. But for the most part, just want to talk about the update and how I feel about certain things, design wise and all that, and yeah, just talk a bit about how this all feels to me and what it means going forward. So to start with, if you liked Last Epoch before, you will most likely still like it now. It is just had a bunch of good stuff happen for the most part. A few things I don't particularly agree with, but as far as an ARPG, if you are an ARPG gamer and you've yet to try this one, you'll most likely enjoy it as well. It's a pretty good game. It's pretty well made. It has a lot of good systems. It's fun to play builds and figure some builds out. Itemization's pretty fun. So it's all still pretty damn good in that way. If you have followed me for a while, you know that I played it about a year ago. I was a fan. It was pretty enjoyable for the 3 weeks or so that I played it, maybe a month, and I can still recommend it from that standpoint. Where it currently sits for me as far as other things, like everyone keeps saying compare it to PoE 2, how is it against PoE 2? I don't think that really needs to be a comparison anymore. PoE 2 is basically just a separate thing altogether. For what it's trying to do with the ARPG genre, it does not really have the same sort of tangent as a Last Epoch or a PoE 1, that sort of thing. Those are kind of in a separate category. PoE 2 is kind of a different thing altogether. It's not really trying to cater to the general ARPG market as much, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel a bit more and have much more, in-depth meaning for lots of things, for lack of a better word, meaning, vision, weight, all of that. Last Epoch is, at this stage for me, more like a PoE 1 mixed with D3. So if you enjoyed D3 back in the day, at some point as it was progressing along, just for its blastiness, that's kind of much more what I feel Last Epoch has become, with much better systems like PoE 1, which it did borrow plenty from, but also innovated on with some of its own. It's a deeper gearing system, deeper building system, and just kind of a lot of everything. So that's kind of also where some of my gripes will start at the moment, and it's not going to be things that everyone relates to, of course, but there are lots of people that feel kind of the same way, and then lots of people that are like, shut up, let us have our fun. But most of what I'm talking about is the loot issue currently in Last Epoch. If PoE 2 has a loot issue of not enough loot, I'd say Last Epoch currently has a loot issue of too much loot, and it starts almost immediately as soon as you get to kind of anywhere, like the campaign midway, maybe even to the end. You start getting kind of bombarded with a lot of loot, but as soon as you start monoliths, which is their end game mapping system, that's when you are just overwhelmed by loot, and you are basically forced to create a filter before you even know what you need from gear, which is kind of annoying. Because if you know what you're doing, then you can sit there, spend 15 minutes, tighten up a bunch of filter things, and then you know what you're doing, and you aren't really having a bit of a loot issue. If you don't necessarily know what you're doing, you kind of still do need to see a lot of loot, and you kind of still do need to figure out what your character is, and you are just getting non-stop assaulted by oranges and purples, and well, at this point you shouldn't really see rares anymore because they don't serve much of a purpose anymore. And I think it's just too much. It honestly feels very Diablo 3ified, where all of a sudden, after a few updates, you are just getting orange beams everywhere, and it loses all meaning. And I think that this game currently has a bit of that issue because, like I said, first of all, you kind of need to know what gear your character needs and what things you might want to plan for in the future if you're playing SSF, and then build a filter around that, because without that, it's just kind of too hard to go through, play the game with lots of loot everywhere. So you need to build a filter with everything like that in mind, and then at the end of the day, you're still picking up a lot of stuff if you care about SSF and if you care about playing other characters in the future, and it is pretty overwhelming. So I think it's a bit of a loot issue, and I'd say it honestly feels like a kind of a response to PoE 2. Like PoE 2 did its thing, Last Epoch was going to do its thing, and then in those 2 weeks of aftermath where everyone was fucking hating on PoE 2 loot, like day by day they'd be reading community sentiment and just sliding the loot slider ever so slightly to infinite, so that no one is ever going to have that same complaint in Last Epoch after seeing, all the PoE 2 smudge. They're just going to be like, all right, we'll make sure that there's fucking loot in this game, and everyone's happy with that. And a lot of people are. They're just like, fuck yeah, they brought back fun and the loot in games. But to me, it's honestly too much, and it does take the weight out of items, as we, use that word plenty, because almost all loot just feels a bit shallow after that when you have so much of it, and when you can basically get whatever you need. Like, you can target farm your uniques and stuff, so it's all great stuff for solo self-found, but it does lack a bit of meaning, because you can target farm almost all of your uniques so easily, and the game becomes a lot more about getting your character set up to begin with, and having the build, and then just kind of increasing numbers on it by min-maxing the right stats, the right rolls, the right, legendary potential, and it does lose a bit of the loot hunt, I feel. Because right now, after playing for, 2 or 3 days, loot just, it doesn't feel particularly exciting for the most part. You are just getting stuff, and then it just happens. It's a given. It, kind of loses sight of that POG moment, that exciting tink sound, for example. You're pretty much just caring about legendary potential 3 stuff, and in particular stuff you are very much looking for. So that's just a bit of a big issue there for me about loot, and it took me 7 hours to complete the campaign, something like that. And by the end of it, I was just wondering, is this still the game I want to play anymore? Because I've basically played a lot of the campaign. I've played a lot of the characters, the builds, and there weren't too many more I wanted to try. And then I was just getting assaulted by loot, and I was thinking, this feels like a lot more of a D3 at this point than what I originally started playing. I thought loot was in a really good place last time I played, and I didn't think it needed to be increased, but here we are. I did persist, I did play more, and it's still fun. It's still fun to upgrade your character, but I think that's still a bit of an issue. Either way, I did start playing a bunch more and refining my character and all that. And the other kind of issue is, I think we did become kind of more powerhouses in certain ways. So the new skill that I'm playing on the rogue and marksman is Heartseeker. And as soon as you get it, it's a kind of big fucking night and day difference of what you were doing to what you are now doing. It's a bit of a game changer, and it's kind of just like a win more skill where almost everything on there is insane, and it's like the best proc skill. It's like one of the best clear skills. It's going to have some of the best synergies for applying things, and it just feels really strong. And from what I've seen and from what I've heard, the Sentinel rework is pretty damn crazy, and almost everyone's just playing that on hardcore and just being absolute powerhouses without too much effort. So there is that, but for the most part, it seems like there's still an okay amount of balance in the game. It's just that the campaign in the early game is pretty damn easy. It's a very comfortable introduction to ARPGing, I'd say, if you somewhat know what you're doing and pick some good skills or classes, uniques, whatever, then it's almost to the point of boredom of how easy it is to begin with. It does, of course, ramp, and the game does get challenging enough. It just takes a little bit to happen. Like, if you're just a normal player, probably midway through regular monoliths before you even hit empowered, you'll start to notice a bit of an increase in difficulty. And then by the time you hit actual, empowered monoliths, the corruption system, that's when you're like, okay, I understand what upgrading gear means and how important some of this stuff can be. And you do start to have true progression and goals with your gameplay in mind. So that's all fine. It just, for my money, it's probably a little bit too easy to begin with. And it feels like substantially easier to me than last time around. Like every single campaign boss I was killing, I was going, wow, I know this is the fastest I've ever killed this boss, and this is off almost no gear and shit leveling items and stuff, compared to before when I would twink out my characters with new concepts and new gear with legendary potential, and I was still killing these things faster than any of those previous twink runs from a year ago, at least from what I remember. So yeah, a couple of gripes there, but other than that, I mean, the new end game system and the league mechanic, it's really good. So it does give you, like, one of the biggest complaints that people had about last Epoch was the monolith system and the end game pretty boring, or you run out of things to do or whatever. This does take a big step in fixing that. You definitely feel like you're doing quite a lot of stuff and have a lot of boxes to tick, almost kind of like PoE. Once you hit maps, you're just like, all right, I want to do this, 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 and this, and get set up for, various farming activities and stuff. You kind of have that now in this game, where you hit your maps and you want to start setting up your extra loot tree, which is like kind of your atlas tree. You want to start customizing how you're going to be running your stuff, and the league mechanic with the crypts and the extra maps and stuff. It has a lot of choice, and it brings a lot to the table as to what kind of extra stuff you can do, what kind of extra zones and objectives for those zones, and the way your loot's going to drop, etc. So it's all pretty good stuff. My only, I guess, minor gripe of that is it's a bit overwhelming to begin with, because you get let's say after running just a few things, like 10 extra maps, and there's a fuck ton of stuff to read on each of those maps. So you're just like, all right, let me pause and see what this one does, pause and see what this one does, what am I going to do with that one, should I be running this one? So it's kind of overwhelming all at once, which is, yeah, it's fine. It's just a bit of a minor gripe, because some things in this game do just bombard you all at once, but at the same time, it's, still usually better than the PoE 1 systems, where you get bombarded pretty heavily all at once as well. I'm just more used to those. So that's all there is to that. Not really much of a complaint or anything, but yep. So yeah, it's all pretty good stuff with this patch, this update. There's one new uber extra boss, and from what I've seen, it looks like a bit of a clusterfuck and not something I'm very fond of. Just adding a big chase thing that is ridiculous for the sake of ridiculousness, and by that I mean it's kind of like a gear check and kind of like playtime check, where you just have to have a character that's capable of eating a whole bunch of shit, and it doesn't really make sense in a linear progression kind of way, where you go, okay, I'm now this strong and I should be able to dodge this stuff. It's like, no, you now need a certain amount of gear to just fucking get through this thing, because you are going to be gear checked out the ass with a huge life bar, huge amounts of attacks, and it doesn't feel like that type of stuff just doesn't feel like a well-designed boss fight anymore. Like some of the PoE 1 Uber bosses, where they just tack on a bunch of extra stuff and it feels kind of haphazard, but it still serves its purpose, I suppose. I'm just not a huge fan of those things, and this particular one, from the very little I've seen, because I've only seen a couple of clips, probably won't be a fan of that either. But there is endgame stuff to chase for, with various other bosses, and then one big endgame boss to chase for. So at least it is something in that direction. Overall, it's a good update. Overall, there's lots of good stuff happening here with Last Epoch. It's not really in the same genre as a PoE 2. So if you're saying PoE 2 or this, I think much like most ARPGs out there right now, you can play a bit of all of them, and you can appreciate all of them for their different strengths and weaknesses. But if you're looking for a game to be directly competitive with PoE 2, it's not really it. It's more competing with PoE 1, and it's taking more of a Diablo 3 route at the end of the day to get there, I'd say, with some more thoughtful systems. That's kind of my overall viewpoint. Is it worth the money? Yep, sure. Is it gonna be something you play for months on end? Probably not. It's most likely going to be very telling for me as to how this thing sits overall in the landscape as to their next big update. If the next big update comes in another year, like what just then happened, then it's going to be hard to care about it, honestly. If it's happening every 3 or 4 months, I think it can fit into our schedule pretty well. And as long as there's good seasons and leagues like this one, and it's happening every 3 or 4 months, I think it's sitting pretty well, and it's going to be a good game to follow along with. So with all that said, let me just dive in and show you what my character currently looks like and how I got to where it is, because it's a pretty fun build and it's a pretty nice way to go through the game, at least in the early way. And yeah, you can follow along and give the game a shot with this one if you don't want to just strictly play Sentinel like a lot of other people are playing. So I'm currently now a level 88 marksman, which starts out as a rogue on the tree you can see here. And it has a bit of an identity crisis right now. And in this game, you will quite possibly have your characters go through identity crises quite often, because you can change your entire sort of like build and setup on the fly like that, based around like one extra strong mod or power from an item or from unique power, something like that. So I started out as just a very vanilla going for Heartseeker, which is the new skill build, and just see where it took me. And it started out as the fire-based version, which turns into, makes your skill a bit more fire-based, then procs daggers that then stack, damage through various mechanics and stuff. And it bases itself on recurve chance, which is basically kind of like D2 guided arrow, bouncing back and forth. It does that, and that's what the entire skill is based around. And we started out by just picking up a Dragon Song bow, which procs dragon fire on crit, and that's what most of the character you saw to begin with, but it became kind of poison based. So to begin with, it was just completely normal. You crit sometimes, you try and scale crit, and you become somewhat of a fire breathing proc based thing. The only issue with this fire thing is it cones in front of your character when it procs, so wherever you're facing as opposed to like where it's critting, so it's a bit annoying in that way. But otherwise it's a very strong start. You can get this thing pretty early on, and people do ask how you get some stuff early on. It pays off to use your runes of ascendance that you have plenty of just on any bow. It turns into a unique, and chances are you'll be able to get one of these pretty damn quick. So it's very good at level 36. You'll probably get Heartseeker around level 40 after you put points into the marksman tree. And then once you get Heartseeker, you can start doing the same sort of spec with this bow, and it kind of like carries you as far as you want to go. You can even go all the way with this one with multitudes of different ways, just stacking lots of damage, crit and elemental damage and stuff. But I did that up until around level 70, and I was just cruise controlling, just putting on random gear, crit, scaling, normal passive tree. But then I found one with extra poison damage, and my entire build turned into kind of a poison-based situation where I started trying to get attack speed, poison and armor shred, because our armor shred from the passive tree turns into poison chance through this. So that's kind of what I was doing. That's what a lot of the gameplay you just saw was. It was kind of poison based and a bit more ramp based, which doesn't feel ideal. Like, it didn't feel great having to build up some of that time. So I don't think it was my favorite way of doing this thing. Just doing non-poison and a bit more hit base is kind of nicer. But ultimately, we are building towards what I just then put on and have built in the past. I probably have a video on a similar sort of character with the Rain of Winter and Icicle Bow on hit. So you get one of these, you get usually Morning Frost boots for extra cold damage, and then just scale flat damage, and then you're proccing a lot of icicles and doing lots of damage, and just more of a cast on crit style build. But at the moment, yeah, basically the world's your oyster. Just get to Heartseeker and then start building however your gear tells you to build, or however you want to build. You can go full bleed, you can go full poison, you can go full ignite. You can go just hit base and crit base and use the various bows. It's really, you can't really lose in the early game. So what I did to level is I used Acid Flask, and the unique that makes your Acid Flask Cold Flask. So you can do the same if you want, and then respec into the Heartseeker once you hit level 40-ish, is I think roughly when it should happen. Or you can just run Puncture as well. Puncture is how a lot of people play the game and level, and then get Heartseeker and then start experimenting from there. That's my current tree. Take it for what it's worth. It's not amazing. It's still very much being changed as I gear up and change things around. Kind of important to have this one for clear, because this is what ends up just proccing punctures all over your screen. That's currently my puncture tree. Probably not correct either. That's my current smoke bomb tree. Almost certainly not correct, because a lot of these things I was just putting points in as I was going and haven't really adjusted them for, you know, all of my future setups and how things are going. And then this is my shift. And then this is my shift tree at the moment as well. I don't even have an extra last skill yet because I didn't really want to incorporate anything else. We could maybe do ballista, we could maybe like attach a decoy, but so far, yeah, I just couldn't be fucked doing it, so I didn't at the moment. But you can experiment and attach other things as well. I've been told that you can attach like Cinder Strike and do extra burning dagger stuff that synergizes with this, but I don't think it was doing anything. It didn't feel like it, so anyway, there's still plenty more experimentation to go. That's currently what it looks like. My tree was based a bit more around poison recently for the poison stuff, but that's currently what I got. And the tree's probably going to change to be a bit more defensive now that I'm empowered monoliths. So most likely going to have to start taking dodge and stuff like that. And then that's what my current tree looks like there. So most importantly, you're basically going for recurve chance. With this skill, you care a lot about recurve. That's the rest there. You care a lot about recurve because that's the name of the game. More recurve, more procs, more hits, a lot of scaling for everything basically on your tree. But otherwise, it's kind of a do whatever the fuck you can and make it up as you go along. Or you can follow very strict guides that people have you know, tried to put out there for this sort of stuff already that just is pretty finalized, and most likely they're going to be like icicle bow style things because this is one of the strongest setups for this type of character. Yeah, I think it's fine to just kind of make up your own thing and see how it goes, and then follow your loot, follow your gear, and eventually you'll hit a bit of a roadblock or something you might want to improve upon, and get ideas from somewhere else. So far that's how it is. It's very good skill. It's very powerful. It's very fun, and you can level kind of however you want. Puncture is a pretty normal way of leveling, and once you get to Heartseeker, it becomes a bit of a different game. And if I have a full guide, one that, you know, if I get a bunch further, maybe I'll put out another video and a bit more boss killing and stuff. But for now, that's probably all you need to know for this kind of thing. And yeah, try and stack dexterity, because that's where a lot of our damage comes from. If you hold Alt, you can see various scalings and how things work, and that helps a lot as well. So for now, that's probably the only video you need to see from me for you know, my opinions and my character. But if there's going to be more, if I keep playing more, I'll have another video about maybe the next character or the end game version of this. So with that, hope you guys are having fun as well. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.